One of the things that made a big difference for me was realizing that most teams are similar as far as how to create a healthy team that's going to thrive, grow, and create greatness, create big things. And my family's a team, and so like we'll do a family meeting, and we run it kind of similar. Like we'll talk about the family values, and when we sat down, myself and my wife were like, what do we want to value as a family? We want our behavior for our kids to be pretty simple. They need to honor Jesus, they need to honor us, honor parents, and honor others.
There's this one scripture, I think it's in Ephesians, and Paul's talking to the church, and he basically says, live a life worthy of the calling that's on your life. How do I live that life that's worthy of the call that's on? Because everyone has a calling on their life.
Yeah.
Like everyone has a purpose. Everyone has something that they're here to do, whether you know it or not, believe it or not. Like, you're not a mistake. You're here for a reason. Am I living the life that's worthy of that calling? And I think number one, that starts with understanding who I am and what I'm called to do. And you know when you're not living the life worthy, because your values, your vision, your mission is all about you.
Right.
It's all about self-serving as opposed to like helping others. Welcome back to the pod. Are we calling it the pod now?
I like it.
Welcome back to A
Sounds
Leveled Up Life. Branamier, Courtney, as always, with Paul McClain, here to help you level up your life in all the areas that matter most: faith, family, fitness, finance, and franchise. Thank you so much for tuning in, for leaning in. Turn the volume up. Get your notepad out. It's going to be a good day. Paul McClain, how you feeling, man?
Dude, good, man. Good to be back with you. And it's always a good day
Yeah.
when we get to sit, talk, and have a conversation that will help you elevate. I mean, we talk about all kinds of stuff, dude.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the small talk, the pointless chatter. I like to get on here and really unpack some things that I think focus on stuff that will elevate in every area of your life. And that's kind of the desire is,
Yep.
can we help you level up in all the areas that matter most: your faith, family, fitness, franchise, and finances. And today, I think the topic, bro, it's gonna
Be
help
good.
that.
It's gonna be good. You know what's really cool is I get a lot of text messages throughout the week, because sometimes you do things and you think no one's listening, but then all of a sudden you get that one text, that one reminder, that one encouragement. It's like, man, keep going. What you said on that podcast a couple weeks ago really brought encouragement. So thank you for supporting the podcast.
Yeah.
Man, it all means a lot to us as we're building this, as we're expanding, as we're reaching out. Do us a favor, like this, put a comment down, whether you're watching on YouTube, Spotify, whatever your platform is. Man, let us know. We would love to hear back. If you know us, shoot us a text, an encouragement.
Yeah.
We're keeping it going, man. We're doing this for you. We're
Hey,
doing.
comment also like what you would love to have
Yeah,
talked about. You
that's
know what I
good.
mean? I mean, I think that's a big thing. When we ran the podcast that was really focused on financial services, I mean, I would go through, we'd look at the comments, and that would be a lot of times how we would develop the next, podcast was, all right, this is what you guys want, because our desire is pretty simple. It's to bring you value. Like, I wake up and my desire is to get a message like that, not because of how it makes me feel, but because I know the difference that it made for you. And so our desire every week is to give you value. And today we're going to unpack something that I think is probably more important now than it's ever been. It's really like, how do you fix your focus,
Yeah.
right? Everybody knows that there's some distractions that are going on.
Right.
I mean, the other day I was, trying to go on and post something of value to help and to serve and give some good content to the audience. Next thing I know, dude, I'm like on somebody I went to high school with, like his ex-girlfriend's brother's page, and like I'm like, what am I doing?
It
And I
happens
start
to the best of
comparing. I'm
us.
like, this guy's running for politician.
Right.
Like, like I'm over here trying to level up, and
What
this
am I
dude's
doing
about
with
to
my
be the
life?
president or something. And so it's like it's easy to get distracted. And so I think the things we're going to cover today is like it's a big part of how to fix your focus, not just like your individual focus, but your family focus. If you're
Yep.
running a business or an organization, your business is focused, and maybe you're working within a corporation. A lot of people on here may be doing that, and maybe you're a team lead, right? Or you
Yeah.
got some people you supervise. The stuff we're going to cover today, guys, I promise you, it's going to help you really kind of fix your focus. It's some of the stuff I learned the hard way, Brand, as I built the business at 19, getting into business, being that new young entrepreneur, just kind of like, I'm just going to go work real hard.
Right.
That helps, but you got to have some intentional focus to building the right characters and behaviors. And that's going to be what we cover today, this mission statement, values, how to develop these pillars in your business and your family that really kind of help create these right expectations of behavior and performance in both.
It's really good. I think sometimes what happens is we get caught up in just doing a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter if it's in your family, if it's in your organization, your business, whatever it is. You can just do a lot of stuff and think you're making a lot of progress, and you look back and like, man, what have I been doing, and how am I making decisions, and how am I moving forward? And you're kind of just playing like ballet, like you're just
Mm-hmm.
kind of spinning around and kind of going wherever, whatever comes next is kind of just wherever the wind takes you. And so for us, instead of just doing a lot of stuff, so I think the doing has to come from the being,
Mm-hmm.
right? You
It's
can
good.
you can become a human doing instead of a human being in any area of life where you just do. But for us, what we've realized is that the doing has to come from the being. Like it has to come from the identity. Like who are you? Who are you as an individual? Who are you as a family? Who are you as an organization? As a company?
Yeah.
Like what do we stand for? What do we believe in? What's our values? What's our mission statement? Like what's our purpose?
Yeah.
And then from the being then comes the doing.
Yeah.
That
It's
makes
good.
sense.
Yeah.
So like for us as the organization I lead, God's House, it's like in the very beginning we were like, okay, this is what we want to do. Like we want to reach people for God. We want to preach the gospel. We want to create an amazing, church experience for people. We want to teach people the Bible. We want to have girls events, men's events. Like we want to do all this stuff,
Yeah.
but like, who are we? What do we stand for? What's the values? What's the mission? What's the vision?
It's
Because if
good.
not, what I've learned is the more people you have kind of in the organization, the more opinions there is,
Sure.
and the more ideas there are. And not everyone like ideas are great, but it's like what are the right ideas? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like the bigger you get, the more momentum you have, the more ideas, the more opinions come your way, and you got to have some sort of guiding principles, guiding values, guiding mission that helps you make the right decisions instead of just going after any opportunity. Like a lot of stuff comes our way, like, hey, would you guys be interested in doing this event or doing this charity or this giveaway? And it's like, it's not bad. There's nothing wrong with those things. But it's like, I don't know if it maybe aligns with our
Yeah.
values or aligns with who we are or aligns with the mission that we're trying to accomplish. Right.
Well, dude, I kind of sat on the, in the beginning, in one of the three chairs that
Yeah.
that were out there as the church began, right? And when I
Your
real,
mom, my mom,
yeah,
Mariah's mom,
exactly.
you know.
Sometimes it was the loudest church,
That's
because
right.
you get your mom to support you, you make you feel good. But the one thing I know is one of the first series that you guys did, right? And I know because you had me do one of the
Yeah.
topics
Yeah.
was on values.
Yeah.
So it meaning that like in the very beginning, it was let's create these values, let's have this vision and mission, and it was started you started to talk about it immediately. It
Yep.
wasn't like, well, once we get 30 people, 40 people, 50 people, it's like, no, we for one need to know what the mission and values are,
Right.
and if we're talking about it all the time, our feet are going to be more likely to follow our words if it's continuously on our mouth and it's on our lips. And then even the couple people that you started to have that were, you know building up the church, that launch team,
Yep.
right? And so kind of talk about that, because I think that for one, I want to get into some practical strategies for you guys on how to develop values and a mission statement, even for your family. So if you're on here and you're like, man, I ain't leading an organization. Well, for one, you're leading somebody, right?
Yeah.
Leadership is influence. And I believe that everything rises and falls on leadership, but I believe that leadership rises and falls on values. And
That's
so
good.
you've got to have these values. And we're going to give you some practical things, but I want to talk about how important it is to start with, because you did it immediately, Brand. Like, why was it so important to start like almost the first series on the vision and
Well,
values?
it's the foundation, right? It's like, who are we? What do we stand for? What do we believe? Because if you don't have like a foundation and you're trying to build something great, well, as soon as some sort of trial or storm or wind blows your way, it's going to knock down whatever you're trying to build. And so whether it's, a family unit, whether it's a church, whether it's a sales team, whatever it is, man, you got to have something to stand on. Because let me tell you, um, like it's not easy to build 'em, right? It's not
Hmm.
like everyone thinks that, they want to be an entrepreneur or they want to build a business or whatever it is. But if you're not standing, if you're not building on something solid, that thing's going to blow over because life happens. You don't know what the economy is going to look like
Yeah.
next year. You don't know who's going to be in charge of the, like, there's all kinds of just different factors. So you got to, from the very beginning, go, all right, this is who we are. no matter what happens.
Yeah.
This is what we stand for, no matter what the economy looks like. This is what we believe in, despite of anything else. And I just, it's not like an original thought that I had, right?
Right.
It's like I looked at, um, and this could be a tip for some of you guys. It's like you don't have to create the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's whatever you're trying to build, it's probably been built before.
Yeah.
And so for me in the very beginning, it was a weird landscape, like going in, it was kind of like coming out of COVID, kind of in COVID a little bit. And I was like, man, there's two different types of organizations that I see. There's two different type of churches, ones that are just booming and ones that are dying.
Yep.
And I was like, well, let me study the ones that are booming. Let me not pay too much attention to the ones that are dying, right? And so I just began to look at, like, man, what are all the commonalities of these organizations that are just reaching people for God, who are attracting the next generation of people who are going to build the church. And so I began to just study and look at just different churches who I kind of had not only admired but like inspired to be like, and said, and they had values, they had things they
Mm-hmm.
stood for, but it wasn't just like posters on the wall. It was like things that they actually lived out. And so for us, man, we just began to study all these different organizations, picked all the ones that we thought like, man, I relate to that. I like that. I like the way that sounds.
Yeah.
And then we put our personality on it, and then knew that it was something that we had to do from the very, very beginning. Um, and so like for us, it's simple. Like Jesus is our message, right? People are our heart. Generosity is our privilege. Excellence is our spirit. Servant leadership is our identity. Honor is our calling. Passion is our pursuit. So those are like our 7 values. So everything that we do as an organization, we filter them through those values. So it's like, man, do we want to go be a part of that event taking place at the park that's ran by the city? Well, maybe let's run it through the values. It's
Yeah.
like, if we go out there, is like the message of kind of that like Jesus? Well, no, it's really not. Well, it might not be bad, but might not just be for us.
Sure.
That makes sense. So I just knew from the very beginning, man, we had to lay some foundational like principles, values, mission, vision for the church. And that way it just helps us kind of move forward.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, looking at you and Mariah and as a church was built, what was attractive was not having values on a wall,
Yeah,
but values on a heart that
that's
were
good.
actually being lived out. And I think that nowadays, man, it's so because people kind of know, like, man, I need some values if you're running a company.
Yeah,
Man, you kind of Google like what's the best value, and they're not even like what no what do I want to see in my organization on
yeah,
my team, because that's the first step in creating values is like what's my behavioral expectation.
yeah,
That's what a value is, right? Because now it's like this is what I expect. Does what you just did, does it go against the value or does it exemplify the value?
right.
And I think that the most confusing thing is having a team, an organization, a family, or whatever that looks like, with values that are stated but not lived,
That's
right?
good. Yeah.
And that's just no different than, and it's so easy to like to walk to talk the talk, but it's so difficult to walk the walk, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like how many times have,
Very.
have we caught ourselves like, telling our kids like, don't yell, and we're like yelling at them.
Right.
They're like, wait,
Confused.
yeah, they're confused. Like,
Yeah.
well, I'm screaming at you to stop yelling, and like we don't yell in this house, but I'm yelling, right?
Right.
And I mean, there's so many different ways that shows up. I think that it's good to see those and know those values, and I believe it's got to be repeatedly like meditated on, rehearsed, and on the forefront of your mind.
Yeah.
Like my belief is that if I went to the leadership team at the church and I said, "Hey, bro, what's the values?"
Right.
They know them.
Yeah.
And that's the question for you if you're running a business. Like, do they know them? Now, if they don't, that's okay. I remember after we developed the values, man, decades ago with the financial services company, that I got to a point where I just kind of paused, and it was in one of my mid-year reflections, and I'm like, do does everybody really know
Right.
the values? And so I took responsibility. I'm like, hey, listen, this is on me. And we did kind of a relaunch, and then every week we would talk about the value, one of them, and I would find somebody on the team that exemplified it, and I would highlight it, because what you magnify will multiply. So I'm trying to magnify what I want more of. I
Right.
want I want to I want to celebrate what I want more of, right? And so we started to talk about it, and then I even used that as a standard if it was going to be a one-on-one conversation where something I was like, man, that person's not living the value. it was easy because everything went back to the values. So
100%.
I would do the public celebration, but in private, it'd be like, hey man, like you showing up late. Like, dude, look, I love you, bro. I mean, you're a great asset. But when you show up late, the issue with that is it violates all of our values. So
Yep.
our values were teamwork, integrity, personal growth, efficiency, and relentlessness.
It's good.
And then we had a sentence to describe each one. And I'll kind of, when we wrap up, we'll unpack some of these things so that way, you might listen and say, hey, that's a good one. Because for me, I was like, what's good? And I did what you did, Brand. Like, let me go to organizations in different places where I believe that their behavior is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You go to Ritz Carlton, dude, their behavior is phenomenal. And like, let me see what their values are because there's something different up in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I
100%.
don't want to, if an organization I don't feel good or they don't make me feel like, I don't care what their values are because they're not living them.
Right. Yep.
They just probably sound good.
Yep.
Right. And so I think for me, dude, like, I remember watching it talked about and then walked out within the church. And I think for how I see it is it comes from the top down and it's almost like you're creating the DNA of that organization that's going to be passed on from each person that walks in and becomes a part of it. It's almost like you're knitting a blanket and the first pattern you knit is going to be replicated.
Yeah.
And like do you want that to be replicated?
Right.
Cuz if you don't, it's not going to look good. And then the performance, you might get some high performing people, right?
Right.
And so it's kind of like, well, our results look good, but if there's no foundation to values, like you said, when a storm comes, and that could be a successful storm,
Right.
like the success is so good it messes them up
Mm-hmm.
because now they develop haughtiness, pride, ego, or some other kind of emotional dysfunction that tears them down.
Yep.
Or it could just be all of a sudden the character shows up and the performance all of a sudden starts to wane because what's crucified when when you've got bad performance and not core values is culture,
Yeah.
and then the culture is dying and now
Yep.
you've got no growth.
Yep. Well, the culture is like simply the behavior of the people,
Yeah.
right? So it's like if something has a good culture, anything like a good restaurant, well, it's the behavior of the people, good or bad, right? And so for me, how I think about it is every organization, team, family has a language.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're all speaking a different language, it's hard to understand, right? So I do this exercise at church and with our leadership, and I go, all right, on the count of three, I want everyone to yell their favorite color as loud as they can. Ready, one, two, three, and everyone yells it. And no one can understand. It's like 40 people,
Right.
and so I'm like, hold on, I didn't catch that. Like, do it again, one, two, three. Everyone yell your favorite color. Ready, go. They do it again. I'm like, I heard it, but I didn't understand it, right? Because everyone speaking a different language at an amplified volume doesn't have any impact at all.
That's good.
And then I'll say, all right, everyone, I want you guys, what's the most obscure color anyone could think of? And they're like, mauve or something like,
Right.
And I'm like, all right, on the count of three, everyone whisper mauve. And they're like, one, two, three, mauve. And everyone could hear it and understand it. It's because it's not about volume, it's about clarity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're
That's
all
good.
speaking the same language, man, we don't have to shout it. We're all on the same page. And that's what values do. That's what a mission statement does. That's what a vision does. It's like, man, let's get everyone speaking the same language.
Mm-hmm.
And that way when you come in and someone who doesn't speak that language but wants to be a part of it goes, I better learn this language.
Right.
I better adapt. It's like any country you go to, like we don't go to other countries and go, hey, you guys better start learning English
Mm-hmm.
because I'm here. It's like, dude, you better adapt or you're not going to fit in. So it's like your family has a language and you're going to do it by either design
Yeah.
or default, right? You have a language that you speak. Um, and so for us, like, let's just be intentional about
Yeah.
the language. Let's set it from the very beginning, like, hey, this is who we are. This is how we talk. This is what we value. That way, anyone comes in, they're adapting to the values, the principles, the vision, as opposed to the other way around. Or you get a strong personality type, you get a
Mm-hmm.
dominant leader, you get someone who has some experience. They come in and they can start to find, the flaws and the faults and things. And then before you know it, you got a kingdom within a kingdom.
Right.
You got someone else trying to build something. It's like, no, dude, we don't do that around here. Why? Not because of me. It's not because King Branamier or
Yeah.
King Paul. No, no, it's like this is the values of who we are. This is so if we're there or not, if we're leading it or not, the foundation is laid.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's beautiful,
I just
dude.
knew that was important from the very
Yeah.
beginning to get everyone on the same page. And this could be for I see it with you guys all the time, like your family, right? It's like I go over to your house, you got the family mission statement on the fridge, and it's good because it takes the blame off of you when you discipline.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, son, what's the values of our family? It's like boom, 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 boom. It's right here. So like, don't get mad at dad. This is what we all agreed to. This is who we are. This is the language that we
Yeah.
speak. This is what we stand for. You're in violation of our values. Let's fix that. Let's get back to who we are called to be. So man,
That's great, dude.
it's important. There's this one scripture. I think it's in Ephesians, and Paul's talking to the church, and he basically says, live a life worthy of the calling that's on your life. And so for me, it's like, man, how do I live that life that's worthy of the call that's on? Because everyone has a calling on their life.
Yeah.
Like everyone has a purpose. Everyone has something that they're here to do, whether you know it or not, believe it or not. Like you're not a mistake. You're here for a reason. Um, and so, am I living the life that's worthy of that calling? And I think number one, that starts with understanding who I am and what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, what do I stand for? And when you're not living the life worthy because your values, your vision, your mission, um, is all about you,
Right.
right? It's all about self-serving as opposed to like helping others. So,
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
it keeps you on track, man.
100%.
Like
That's good.
it's like if it's either done by design or by default.
Yep.
And anything that's done by default, it's not going to sound or it's not going to look good. But by design, we can build a life that looks intentional,
Yeah.
a life that matters and it's significant, a life that's not based off of feelings, right? It's kind of like language based off of default.
Right.
Man, it could have some cussing,
Yeah.
it could be, complaining, it could be
It's all over the
blaming, it
place.
could be gossiping because it's language by default. It's like, how do I feel? Well, I kind of feel insecure because that person's better, so I'm going to gossip about that and this and this. It's ugly language, right?
Yep.
But by design, you can say like, no, what, like you said, who am I called to be?
Right.
And so therefore, let me look at my behavior. My behavior is going to be predicated on these values. And so what do I value? I value honor, man. I
Right.
value celebrating others. I value speaking life over others. Okay, so then I can't be swaying or pulled into what I feel, which
Right.
is by default. I got to step in and continue to act, behave, think, and feel based off of design.
Really
And I
good.
just think that that's an important thing. And man, one of the first times, Brian, I saw this that really hit me, and I was like, man, like I got it. I see the significance of this. As I went down to the Dream Center,
Mm-hmm.
and I was walking through the halls, and this guy came by, and he was like, "Hey, Pastor Matthew, I just want to say, man, I love you, and it's so good to be here." And the guy, he had like the teardrop tattoos on his face, man, like he was tatted up, and he looked rough. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I was like, dude, what's his story? And he said he was just off the streets like 2 weeks ago. He's selling meth and doing drugs and all into kinds of different, like, he had prostitute, all these different things that he was doing. I'm like, how how does that happen? How does he have that language? How does he have that behavior? He said, well, on the streets, it's weird if you were to say, hey, I love you, man. People are like, dude, what are you trying to get after? What are you trying to take from me?
Right.
What do you do? He's like, that would be weird. And so on the streets, to fit in, you got to be hard. You got to harden your heart. You got to have a certain behavior to survive and to just fit in on the streets. So, but here, when people walk through the doors, there's they feel like the outcast if they're not the one that says, "Hey, I love you, man."
Yeah.
He's like, so pretty quick they start to conform, realize that,
Yep.
man, if I don't want to be obscure, if I don't want to be
Right.
an outlier, if I don't want to be the outcast, this is what it looks like here.
Yep.
And so he said pretty quick, it didn't take very long for them to start to conform into our culture here.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, what a powerful example
Mm-hmm.
of culture
Very good.
to get somebody that has been walking
Yep.
with these values to shift their language and start to walk differently. It was pretty crazy to
Yeah,
see.
it is. I mean, it's just it's the power of language. It's the power of having like core values, core principles. It's the power of knowing who you are,
Yeah.
right? It's like when you walk it. If he would have walked in there and like, you know, his leadership would have been like, hey man, just keep doing you, and over time we'll figure this thing out. Like, and just let him behave that same way. Well, then he may or may not have got the help he needed, or could have just delayed the process.
Yeah.
But from the very beginning, the standard was set, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if you want help, if you want treatment, like this is how we behave in here.
Yeah.
And you see the exact opposite. Like you go to, I mean, I've never been to prison, but I've toured a couple of them, right? But you go into a prison and it's
Right.
like fight or flight. They tell you
Uh-huh.
the exact opposite. Like, hey, if you want to survive in here, you
Different.
lose all the
Yeah.
pretty boy stuff. You lose the love you bro stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
you fight. You adapt to the negative culture to survive,
Yeah.
right? And so it just show, and I'm sure your family or your organization doesn't want to be like a prison, right? So
Yeah.
let's not conform in a bad way. Let's conform in the best way possible, to push us and help guide us into the person, the family, the team, the church that we're called to be. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so it's so important. So I wrote these down, Paul, and it's kind of what you're talking about. Here's what I said: what 5 things that a vision statement, a value statement, what it accomplishes. Number one, clarity of purpose.
Yeah.
Like this is who we are. This is what we stand for. Is what we believe. Number two, it helps alignment and unity of the people. So it's like, hey, we're all united and we're aligned. It's like the language that we're talking about. Number three, it's accountability, what
Yeah.
you just said. So it's keeping us accountable to not just our feelings, not just like our actions, but it's keeping us accountable to the vision and mission that we're going after. Number three, it helps with resilience, right? So in challenging times, it's something that we can fall back on. And number five, it helps with legacy and impact. And so when we're long gone,
Yeah.
if
That's
the
good.
values or the vision or the mission has been established, man, it's a legacy that's going to be there forever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even about you at this point. It's just like, hey, this is, and you see this like
Yeah.
with family units, right? It's like, man, great 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 grandpa set this, like this is the standard of our family,
Yeah.
and you don't fall short of this. So it's weird if you're the outlier, if it's weird if you mess it up, right? So like you see these established legacy type
Yeah.
families, like that's what you aspire to be. And it's not that they were special, but like the standard was set so high, like this is
Mm-hmm.
who we are as and it could be like as a family, like um we value having real estate. Like we
Right.
value whatever like it could be the most obscure thing, but it's like the value was set, right? So for someone listening, it's like, hey, what do you value? Who do you value as a team, as an organization, as a family? And then make it plain, write it
Yeah.
down, and not just for a poster on the wall, but so it's a reminder that every day you're to live out that value. And I think that's what you're talking about earlier. Like with your team, you would have someone lead like every week in the sales meetings or the whatever it is, the wrap up meetings. Like you would start by saying, "Hey, reminder, guys, this is one of our values. This is why it's important." And
And start with good news.
we do the same thing at church, right? Every Sunday morning before the actual service, like our team gets together, prays, does updates, but then someone always leads out with the value because it's a reminder. Hey, Jesus is our message. So I don't care if you're holding a sign, cleaning the bathrooms, or preaching the message. Like what you're doing, the message of that action should be Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
right? People are a heart. So
Yeah.
like it's a reminder, hey, there's gonna be some messed up people that walk in here, and your flesh is gonna want to judge them. Your flesh is gonna want to like have some certain thoughts about them. But like if I could remind you that people are a heart, you see them in a whole new lens, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just good to have them not only on the wall, but like you got to say them because you'll forget about them,
Yeah.
and then you'll start living according to how you feel.
Well, then you get your leadership too to like buy in and say like this is not just the leaders, right? The person that's running the organization. This is just not their values. Like this
Yeah.
is our values. Like this is who we are. Like I'm a part of this.
Yep.
It's not like, I'm not in the business or in the organization. Man, the business is in me.
That's
It's a
good.
part of my DNA. It's running through my blood. It's who I am, and it's what I exemplify. And I think that's such an important thing. You know, and I even see this when you do the team nights, right?
Yep.
Like you'll celebrate and bring people up and recognize them, not just for performance as far as like this person did X Y Z, but a lot of it's behavioral performance. Like they were a great reflection of who we are
Yeah.
and what we're called to be and what our DNA is. And I think that's important. Like to not just recognize within your team or business organization just the person that went out there and he sold 10 cars or 10 deals or whatever that might be, and he was a leader there, but was there somebody that also progressed and exemplified a next level leadership
Yeah.
within the values, right? Was their behavior top notch, right? Because I think that it's both. You got to have attitude and activity, and when you find someone that's exemplifying both, they're going the extra mile and they're embodying the behavioral expectations.
Yep.
Like, man, that's a beautiful thing, but I think it's good to celebrate both of those and do it frequently. Um, one of the things that made a big difference, Brand, for me was realizing that most teams are similar as far as how to create a healthy team that's going to thrive, grow, and create greatness, create big things. And my family's a team, and so like we'll do a family meeting, and we run it kind of similar. Like we'll talk about the family values, and when we sat down, myself and my wife were like, "What do we want to value as a family?" It's like, well, we want our behavior for our kids to be pretty simple. They need to honor Jesus, they need to honor us, honor parents, and honor others.
Yeah.
And so it needed to be simple, it needed to be plain. For one, it's our kids. So
Right.
it's like we don't want to have like these long like
Yeah. Yeah.
these you know long words that are like
Hard
great
to
to look
understand.
at. But
Yeah.
no, it's like no, it's simple. We want to. So does your behavior, did that honor Jesus? Did that behavior honor us?
Right.
Did the behavior honor somebody else? So if we have the cousins over, it's like, did you honor him?
Right.
Well, no, but that's an other. That's
Right.
somebody else. Did you
Right.
honor that person? And then if they didn't, we would address it. And one of the consequences that we would have, depending on the age, we'd be like, all right, go write the family values 10 times. So they'd have to write it. Honored family. So it's just
Give them a
get
little Bart Simpson
yeah,
action.
it's getting in their mind. You know what I mean? And then the mission statement, the same thing. When we
Yeah.
came up with it, we sat around and we're like, okay, what's important for us, right? And this is going back to like before we even had some of the kids. This Peyton was like 10. I think it was just Peyton and Parker, and Peyton came up with a lot of them. And it was our family believes in living an intentional life. That was one of our first things. Like we're not going to live a life based off of default.
Yeah.
It's going to be based off of intention. Our family believes in living an intentional life. To have a servant's heart. No, it's gosh, you think I know it. Our family believes in living an intentional life. To have an attitude of gratitude and positivity. And so, like, that's what we're going after. No matter what circumstances, situations take place in life, is our attitude still grateful?
Yeah.
Is it still positive? And then the next part of it is to have a servant's heart that's completely full of love, to be Christ-like. And so those are the part, and then to be persistent in our pursuit, to be independent and interdependent in our society.
It's good.
And so that was our mission. And so we have the cards all printed out. They stick them in their backpacks. They got them on their nightstand. Um, the older ones, they all know it by heart. If you ask them what it is, they can tell you what the mission statement is. Same thing. If there's something that doesn't line up with it, we'll address it and we'll say, okay, hey, listen, what you just did, that wasn't a positive attitude.
Right.
So go write the mission statement, and they'll write it down and they'll explain. We'll have them highlight and give detail on whatever area that they messed up on,
Right.
because like this is our mission as a family,
Yeah.
and
That's really good.
we do it at the dinner table once a week. We get together, we highlight what's going good. We always start with good news, and then we open it up, like, is there anything you guys want to share and talk about, because we're a family. So like we don't judge each other, we love each other. Is there something that is going on that needs to be addressed, because we want to know here before
Yeah.
it goes anywhere else, like what's going on.
That's good.
And it's just trying to create that culture of like, hey, we're all in this together. We're all gonna fall short and mess these up, but this is our gold standard. This is what we're going after. This is who we are, and this is what we want our life to exemplify. And
Yeah.
it's been a big deal.
I think for most people, they hear something like that and it could get like overwhelming. Like, well, dude, I don't know where to start. I don't
Yeah.
know how to. I mean, you don't know my kids, Paul. Like, that your kids have those things memorized. Like my kids are trying to, memorize the ABCs still. Like, what are we doing? I think for anyone that's thinking about like that's hearing this and going, man, you know what? I need this a mission or vision or value statement as a family, right? Because I think it starts at home.
Yeah.
I think it's simpler than you might think, right? It's all age appropriate. So for you, just sit down with your family and go, hey, what do we value? Like, what do we like to do? What do we stand for? And I think more people would be surprised that your kids have something to
Yeah.
offer. Like, and maybe for you, it doesn't have to be extremely like you don't have to overthink it. Like, hey, we value having fun. Like we value working hard. We value being generous to people. We value God's word. Like what do you value? Start there.
Yeah.
Allow your kids to throw out some words, and then you as parents could kind of craft those into a short, simple statement And that could be the kind of the foundation of you building and it changes. It could change over time. Like maybe as the kids get older, you no longer value, um, I don't know, whatever it was at the time. Like we value family vacations,
Right.
right? And so now everyone's out. So like, that's not really a value of ours anymore. Well, you could change it. Like now we value spending quality time together at holidays, whatever it is, right? So so values can adjust as seasons change, but I think it's so important to kind of establish, hey, this is who we are, and kind of always have that as a foundation because I think you're right, man. Like before the world tells you who you are, or before things get out to friends and classmates and everyone else, it's like, hey, let's start at home. Let's
Yeah.
let's let's figure this out at home, and then that way we can live out who we're called to be.
Yeah.
You know, so that's good, man.
Well, dude,
Really
I,
good.
I would just encourage everybody right now because I think it's so easy and the world will kind of feed you this lie that, man, if you could just create all kinds of wealth and possessions and be the one that can pass that on to your kids and kids, like that's leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes it's leaving a snare if you've not built the right values and mission. Maybe you've been so
Mm,
attentive and aggressive and going after your pursuit, working hard and creating, income and wealth. And for somebody that's not, you're undervaluing what you're really doing right now, which is instilling significant values that's going to lead from the generational true wealth, right? And then the money will come if the values are built the right way. The success will come, whether that's financial, relational, right, marital, whatever it is, it'll come if the values are right. Because what I do know to be true is this: like you could go after all those things, man, pass on wealth, but it goes to your next generation.
that's good.
You weren't intentional with creating the value, spending the time, infusing those, and really being a great steward of your family. And then all of a sudden, as time goes on, it passes on, man, and it becomes something that destroys them, right? Because the values weren't there.
Yeah.
And I listened to this last night. It was a Netflix series. I forget what it's called, but Doc Rivers was talking about how like his grandma would say like, we're not victims, we're not victims,
Right.
we're victors. And like that was a value that she instilled, and he lived from that. Now she didn't have like what the world would say would be success.
Right.
She was working two jobs just trying to get by, but she instilled these great values that passed on. And when Doc Rivers got him and he went after it and capitalized on those, put them in a place and had the opportunity show up, man, that opportunity was seized
Yep.
because his grandma and his mom, they infused
It's really
these
good.
values that he didn't choose a victim mindset when he could have. And he gave all these stories of things that happened where that
He
where
could have
he
easily.
was a victim. They
Right.
burned down his house and his skinheads, all these different things that took place. Where I'm like, I didn't even know that happened, but he chose a victor's response. And what could have taken him out, he actually just built another level of success
That's
upon.
good. Really
And
good.
so I would just encourage everybody on here, like, don't don't undervalue or underappreciate what you're currently doing, instilling these values of being kind, of being loving, of being generous, of being authentic, of being sincere, of being integrous to your family. That might be the biggest deal that you're overlooking because the enemy's trying to get your eyes off it. But man, that's going to produce fruit upon fruit for generations to come.
That's really
And so
good.
it's a big deal.
Very good. I think just to add on to that, I think it's so important to not just be like goal oriented, but to be value oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could live the value, then you'll probably reach the goal.
That's yep,
Right. So
absolutely.
it's like an example would be like, man, I have a goal to buy a house this year. That's a great goal. Nothing wrong with that. But goals change, right? Goals have expiration, goals have timelines. A value, instead of having that goal, would be I value being a financially responsible person.
Yep.
And if you just live that value, you'll probably end up meeting that goal. Right.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, what are some maybe for you, like we just did the podcast about like the reset, right? The reflection. Maybe for you moving forward in these next 6 months of the year, it's like what are some values? Like what are some value goals that I have? Not
It's
just
good.
like goals to do certain things, but like who do I aspire to be? And if you could just be those things, then you'll probably end up reaching those goals,
Yeah.
right? It's like instead of we want 1,000 people in the church by the end of the year. Well, why don't we just help people know who God is? Like, why
It's
don't we
good.
just get really good at loving people? Why don't we just get really good at showing honor to people? Why don't we just be generous people? And then if we could just live out those things, 1,000 people will probably be attracted to that. And then we'll end up meeting the
It's good.
goal because we're living out the value. So I don't know what that looks like
Dude, I
for
love
people's
that,
life,
bro.
but
It's so good.
yeah,
And the bonus content, guys, make sure to go to bonus.aleveluplife.io. We'll go ahead and put down the values of the
yeah,
different organizations and companies that we've ran, that we do run. Also, the mission statements, just so you can kind of get a flavor of what that looks like.
yeah.
Because, like you
They're all
said,
different.
yeah, and it's easy to overcomplicate. Like it's so much simpler than you think.
Yeah,
And sometimes just going through some companies, organizations, or values, you're like, I like that one. Well, then put it in place.
yep,
Like some of mine are taken from different companies where I was like, I really like it, and then we'll alter and adjust like the descriptive sentence for that specific value. But in the bonus content, guys, we'll give a sheet and it'll break it all down. It'll show you exactly what that looks like. And I would just encourage you guys today, go out there and continue to water the root, right? Continue to take care of the root. That's living by values. That's
yep,
living by mission. The fruit will come. But I think too often you get on this pursuit of saying, okay, these are some of the new values I want to put in place, but the progress doesn't show up. And so you start being like, what's going on here, man?
yeah,
And then you start digging it up, and then you pull it up and you're like, oh shoot, there was something growing. It just hadn't become visible yet. Well, fool,
right,
you just killed it,
yeah,
dude. Like you took it out of the ground, like trying to overlook at and figure out why is this like this, right? And then, as the fruit comes, don't get so distracted staring at it, being like, wow, look how great this is, look how amazing this is. Because then you'll fall back, you'll compromise, and then all of a sudden you start not watering the root, which is
that's
only the
good.
thing that produces the fruit. Or don't look at it and be like, why is the fruit dead? It's dead. And now you're so focused on the fact that you're trying to do better, you're trying to put in values, but somehow some circumstance or event or situation made it actually worse. Well, that doesn't negate the truth that if you stay diligent in your pursuit and stay persistent and consistent, the fruit will change from dead to a lot
Yeah,
bigger and better, right? And so I think it's a focus that you got to have. And so, dude, as always, man,
that's good.
this is
That was good.
life for me when I get on here and I'm able to talk with you, dude, and listen to your words and
I
just
feel
kind
the
of
same,
glean from
bro.
you. So
That's good.
I
Good stuff.
appreciate you guys. Hey, let's go out there and make it a massive week. Put these values into practice. And like Brand said, we don't want to be a podcast that inspires, but we want it to be impactful. And so, as you build a foundation of anything, that foundation is only truly built on a rock if you go out there and do it. If you come and you hear and you don't do, you might have built the foundation today, but it's on the sand. And so, when things come, or distractions come, or storms come, it'll blow it away. Let's build it on the rock by going out there and applying these things today and making sure your life reflects a life that's leveled up. So, guys, we love you. Be strong, stay steadfast, and go make it a big week.